Okay, so imagine for a second. You wake up, you grab your phone, you send a text, maybe do a video call later.
Hmm.
Every single one of those things, all that instant connection that we just take for granted, it can all be traced back to one person, one single moment, and really just one sentence.
And here's the hook for this deep dive. The man who gave the whole world a voice was, at his core, obsessed not with sound, but with silence.
We are talking, of course, about Alexander Graham Bell, but if you think he's just the telephone inventor who cashed out, you're missing this incredibly complex, driven, and frankly, very contradictory person behind the legend.
Exactly. Our sources, they tell a story of an inventor who was really a teacher first, a scientist driven by family tragedy, and a man whose greatest triumph was almost immediately buried in legal fights and rivalries.
So our mission is to unpack all that source material and find the facts that really surprise you,
We have to start at the climax of it all.
right? March 10th, 1876. Bell is working like a madman in this tiny Boston lab, and he finally does the impossible. What were those words? The words that launched everything.
They were so simple,
Yeah.
so clear, and just perfect for the moment. He just said, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you."
And the thing we have to understand is that those words weren't just a lucky accident.
Not at all.
They were the result of, 30 years of Bell focusing on the pure physics of sound waves? This was skill and preparation and obsession all meeting that one moment of opportunity.
And that preparation was born in the most unlikely place you could imagine. I mean, Bell's story doesn't start in some big engineering workshop.
Yeah.
It starts in the quiet of his own home, trying to communicate with his own mother.
And this is where we get to that central, really fascinating paradox of his life. Before he connected the world with sound, he was completely focused on breaking the isolation of people who couldn't hear. It all started with silence.
Yeah, his family life was basically one long research project into acoustics and speech. His mother was almost completely deaf.
Right, and his father, Melville Bell, was this famous elocutionist, a teacher of vocal techniques.
And his grandfather, too, a speech specialist. So he's literally surrounded by people who are studying the mechanics of sound, not just the experience of hearing it. He saw his mother using ear tubes and reading lips every single day.
He learned to understand language through vibration.
Exactly. He had this profound, non-auditory sense of it. And his father's big thing was this system called visible speech.
Oh, this is crucial.
It really is. It was a set of symbols that represented the exact position of your tongue, your throat, your lips. Everything you needed to make any sound in any language.
So Bell didn't just hear words, he learned to see them. He could look at someone speaking and, in theory, read what they were saying just by watching the mechanics of their mouth.
And that visual understanding, that led to tinkering. From when he was like 12 years old, he was building things.
I read that he and his brother tried to build a replica of human vocal cords.
They did. Using rubber and cotton and plaster. A machine that could actually make vowel sounds when they pumped air through it with bellows.
So he wasn't trying to transmit sound yet.
Not at all. He was trying to replicate it mechanically. He even used a phonautograph, which was this device that scratched sound waves onto smoked glass just to prove that you could see and measure these complex sounds. That was the foundation for everything.
But this period of intense study, it gets interrupted by a real tragedy.
A huge one.
Hmm.
Both of his brothers died from tuberculosis. It's what pushed the family to move from Scotland to Canada for the cleaner air. But even that loss, that move, it didn't stop his curiosity.
In fact, it kind of led to the next step. His work eventually brought him to the United States to teach deaf students how to speak, specifically at the Boston School for Deaf Mutes. And this is where all the threads, the personal, the intellectual, the financial, they all start to weave together.
And it's here that he meets Mabel Hubbard. She was one of his students, profoundly deaf since she was a little girl from scarlet fever. But she was incredibly smart, incredibly determined.
And she was so much more than just the student who became his wife. She was his partner intellectually. And, this is critical. She was his financial backbone.
Absolutely. The sources make it clear that Bill's experiments were, they were chaotic and really expensive. Mabel's father was a wealthy lawyer, and her family support was the engine that kept those experiments going.
So she was the pivot point.
A huge one. Bell started taking everything he knew about sound waves, how they could be seen, how they could be shaped, and he started asking this impossible question.
Could you take something as complex as a human voice and send it across a wire?
And we have to stress how insane that sounded at the time. Telegraphs existed, sure.
Right, dots and dashes. An on-off system. Simple DC current.
Exactly. Digital, you could say.
Yeah.
But the human voice is this incredibly complex analog wave. It's alternating current, AC.
Yeah.
It's constantly changing in frequency and amplitude. The scientific consensus was that it was just too messy, too complex to transmit electrically.
He was betting against everyone.
And his first goal wasn't even the voice. His first big project was the harmonic telegraph. He just wanted to send multiple Morse code messages at the same time on one wire, using different frequencies.
So it was all about vibration and frequency from the very beginning.
Always. And he had Thomas Watson, this brilliant mechanic, by his side. Watson was the practical guy who had to put up with all of Bell's crazy ideas, the burned wood and the constant failures in their little workshop.
And they weren't alone in this race. You have to bring in Elisha Gray.
Yes, Elisha Gray. A very successful inventor working on the exact same idea of a talking telegraph. And this is where the story gets cinematic. It becomes a race that's decided by hours, not days or years.
February 14, 1876. Valentine's Day, of all days, both Bell and Elisha Gray show up at the patent office in Washington, D.C. on the same day.
It's unbelievable. Bell's lawyer files what's called a caveat, basically an intention to file a full patent later. Gray, on the other hand, files a full patent application for a liquid transmitter.
And that liquid transmitter design is, well, it's pretty important.
It's arguably the key. The sources are a bit murky on who physically arrived first, but the record shows Bell's application was filed just hours before Gray's. That tiny, tiny time difference basically decided the future of communication.
It's wild, but there's a technical irony here, isn't there?
Oh, a huge one. Because Gray's design, that liquid transmitter, that was a concept Bell hadn't really been focused on. But you look at Bell's notes just a few weeks after that patent filing.
And suddenly, he's experimenting with a very similar liquid resistance device.
Exactly. So he has the legal win. Now he needs the technical proof. Which brings us to March 10th, the big moment.
1 month later.
They're working in separate rooms with this clumsy wire strung between them. And Bell, at the transmitting end, is trying to get things working when he just, in a moment of total chaos, spills battery acid all over his clothes.
So he shouts, not thinking about the machine, just panicking.
Right, he yells into the mouthpiece, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you."
And Watson, in the basement at the receiving end, just freezes.
Because he doesn't hear a buzz. He doesn't hear clicks. He hears the words, clear as day, through the receiver. The actual human voice transmitted electronically for the first time in history. The shock must have been absolute.
Those words just cracked open a whole new world. So Bell takes this prototype to the Centennial Exhibition in Philadelphia.
And the reaction is just total astonishment. People thought it was magic.
This is where we get that great story about Emperor Dom Pedro of Brazil.
Yeah, he knew Bell from his work with the deaf. So he puts the receiver to his ear, Bell speaks into the other end from across the room, and the emperor just drops it.
And shouts what?
My God, it talks.
I mean, can you imagine seeing that for the first time? It was a scientific marvel, but
Right.
going from a marvel to a business wasn't so easy.
No, not at all. After all that public acclaim, you'd think the money would just pour in. But the initial commercial story is, it's one of the biggest corporate blunders in history.
Bell actually tried to sell the entire patent.
He did, to Western Union, the communications giant of the day, for $100,000.
Just $100,000. And they said no.
They laughed at him. There are actual memos from Western Union that call the telephone, and I'm quoting here, an interesting toy. They said it had no commercial possibilities.
A toy. That has to be one of the worst business calls of all time.
Of the entire 19th century, easily. Because within 2 years, the telephone just exploded. Businesses, private citizens, everyone realized how powerful it was to just talk to someone instantly.
And Western Union had to scramble. They tried to launch their own version, but it was too late.
Way too late. By then, the Bell Telephone Company, which would eventually become AT&T, had locked down the patents and was already on its way to becoming one of the most powerful companies on Earth.
So Bell becomes incredibly wealthy, famous beyond his wildest dreams, and yet, and this is the surprising part about his character, he hated being a businessman.
Hated it. He was restless. He was disorganized when it came to business. He just didn't care about the corporate battles or the ledgers.
So what did he do?
As soon as the telephone was a proven thing, he basically handed off the business side to his father-in-law and his partners. He took the money and went right back to his workbench. For him, the problem of voice transmission was solved. Time for the next impossible idea.
And that, I think, is the real takeaway for you listening to this. The telephone was this one massive, world-changing chapter, but Bell's curiosity, it was.
Hmm?
It was huge. It was uncontained. He spent the rest of his life chasing those aha moments in completely different fields.
The list of his other projects is just staggering. And he wasn't just dabbling. He was applying that same rigorous scientific method to everything from flight to medicine.
He worked on flying machines, right? These complex tetrahedral kites.
Yep, groundbreaking designs. He worked on hydrofoils boats that lift out of the water on these underwater wings. He set speed records with them.
But the most futuristic thing he did has to be the photophone.
Oh, absolutely. He was transmitting sound not on wires, but on beams of light, modulated sunlight. Back in 1880, he sent a voice message hundreds of yards using nothing but a beam of light.
So he basically invented wireless communication decades before.
Before radio was even a thing, yeah. I mean, it wasn't practical then. You needed a clear day. But the core concept was pure genius.
And if there's one invention that really speaks to his desire to apply science to human problems, it has to be the metal detector.
Yes. That's such a great story. He invented that in 1881 for one specific reason, to try and save the life of President James Garfield after he'd been shot.
The doctors couldn't find the bullet.
Exactly, and trying to find it was causing more infection. So Bell rushes this device, his induction balance, to the White House. He's adapting his knowledge of electrical currents to a medical emergency.
And it didn't work, did it?
It failed, but not because the machine was flawed. It failed because, and you can't make this up, the president was lying on a bed with metal springs.
Oh, no. So it interfered with the signal.
Completely.
Yeah.
But the invention itself was sound. And his legacy, it goes way beyond just the devices. He shaped major institutions.
He founded the company that became AT&T, obviously, but then there's National Geographic.
Right. He became the second president of the National Geographic Society. When he took over, it was this tiny, boring academic journal.
Just for scholars.
Yeah. Bell's the one who introduced photographs. He shifted the focus to popular science and exploration. He's the one who turned it into the magazine we all know today.
The man who started by studying the human tongue ended up promoting the exploration of the entire globe.
What a journey. All from this focused obsession with understanding silence, which ended up giving the entire world a collective voice.
And that connection to silence, it brings us to this incredibly powerful symbolic tribute when he died in 1922.
It's a beautiful detail. At the very moment of his burial, every single telephone in North America went silent for 1 minute.
Millions of them, all these people, pausing the worldwide conversation that he started just for a moment to say thank you. A global moment of quiet in his honor.
And that's a powerful thought to leave you with. Think about his motivation. Bell never set out to invent a commercial device. He invented the telephone because he was trying to understand and overcome silence for his mother, for his students.
His whole life was about breaking down auditory barriers. So
Right.
the fact that the ultimate tribute to his success was a moment of shared global silence, it leads you to a final question. Did his original goal, helping the deaf, somehow shape the perfect design for everyone else? Did the man who understood silence better than anyone else, by necessity, give us the clearest voice, something to think about the next time your phone rings?